Hey, this is Danny Voss, co-host of the Diesel Performance Podcast. Before we start today's show, I wanted to thank each and every one of you for downloading and listening to the show. The response has been great. We really appreciate the support. We've uploaded only 6 shows so far, and already it's been downloaded several thousand times. That is absolutely amazing for a new podcast like this. Our goal is to publish a new episode every week. We also want to grow the number of listeners, so please share this podcast with everyone. Subscribe through iTunes if you haven't already, and leave a comment. Sorry to keep you waiting. Let the show begin.
The following podcast contains explicit language.
Hello again. Thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Wilson.
And I'm Danny Voss.
And we really appreciate you listening in to the Diesel Performance Podcast. Today we got a great episode. We're going to talk about buying trucks. It's something that all of us had to go through at one point and something that we're probably all going to go through again in the future. So, Danny, tell us a little bit about your experience and your background as far as buying and selling diesel trucks.
Well, I was in the automobile industry for a little over 7 years, doing buying, selling, trading all over the country, actually all over the world.
Really?
And yeah, you name it. I've sold a vehicle to a lot of different continents. But, you know, we talk about Duramaxes every day at work. We talk about Cummins trucks, you know, but like you said, everybody's been in the situation before. They've been in the buying seat. So let's put you there and let's figure out what we need to do as far as spending your money wisely.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so we're going to break down a customer profile, which Danny will lay out for us here in just a second. I'm going to be the customer. Danny's going to make some recommendations and some warnings about different trucks that we would consider in those price ranges.
And we're going to hit them all. So whether you're a Ford guy, a Dodge guy, or a Chevy guy, you know, pay attention. I'm sure the information you're looking for is going to be in the segment.
Excellent. Go ahead, Danny. Who am I?
All right. You can be Paul. How's that sound?
I
You're
like
good
that.
at being Paul.
That's a good name.
You can be Paul. You're 40 years old. You have 2 kids. You work construction. Yeah, you have 2 kids. You're a construction worker. And you use your truck for, you know, weekend warrior purposes. You got a toy hauler. You got your camper. You know, and you race for fun on the weekends. You also haul your race car to the drag strip.
Okay.
You're living the dream, Paul.
I love it. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah,
actually.
Now you're looking for a truck. You know, everybody's got different budgets, and we all know that. And working at the dealership for so long, I had people come in with anywhere from $10,000 to $40,000, and that was kind of our outline that we laid out to, you know, kind of dissect the market that way. So, you know, let's say Paul has $10,000 he wants to spend. He's got $10,000, and it's burning a hole in his pocket.
You said it. Okay, so I got $10,000. I got 2 kids. Mm-hmm. I daily drive my truck. This is my vehicle that I'm going to live in.
You are.
Okay, so I know basic things are important to me. I got to have some options. I got to have power windows, power locks. I'm not reaching across to lock the doors after the kids. I have to have a back seat, so no regular cabs. I'll just tell you up front.
That's okay.
$10,000, I got kids. I got to put them in it.
And let's face it, I mean, $10,000, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a nice truck that you can put your kids in and want to drive every day. They are out there, but you're going to have to resort to going back in time a little bit. Possibly a late model 12 valve. They went all the way up till 98.5, or a second gen from 98.5 to 02 Dodge. There's a lot of trucks, you know, in that $10,000 price range, but a lot of things that I really look for as far as the first gen, second gen Cummins trucks, well, primarily the second gen from 98.5 to 02. You know, first of all, I find out, is it a 53 block? Are you running the block that everybody hears bad things about? We would really stay away from the 53 block just because of the stigma. Our mechanic here owns 2 53 block Cummins second gens. So it's not saying it's bad, but, you know, if you're going to try to resell it and you're trying to buy get the best deal, stay away from the 53 block. It's stamped right on it. On the driver's side, bottom of the block, right above the oil pan, right by the wire harness. You can pull it down and move it and see that info.
Tell me, why is that? Why do I stay away from the 53 block?
Well, a lot of guys, if you go online and you look, you can see that the blocks are known to split, whether you're tuned, hauling big weight, or hauling big weight while you're tuned. You know, they can basically lose all their coolant, and they split right by the water jackets, and you now have a boat anchor if that happens to you. It was a bad casting for the year.
Okay.
And not everyone has it, but those are the ones that you should stay away from, especially if you only have 10 grand and now you're looking at a truck. You might be up for a motor replacement if that's the case. Right. So when it comes to Dodges, in the second gens, specifically, I stay away from that 53 block, like I was saying, but also you got to save some extra money for a few small necessities. You got to put a lift pump on a VP truck because the factory lift pumps are notorious for failing. And when they fail, they actually don't have a flow-through capability, and they will, in fact, starve your VP44 injection pump. And if you've been there, you know what I'm talking about because you probably learned the hard way. So now you're $1,000 in your VP injection pump, and you're stuck replacing your lift pump. So I tell people the very first day you buy a second-gen Cummins, buy a lift pump to replace the stock lift pump. So when it does fail, because it will one day, it's 12 volts, it's always on. When it fails, not if.
Right.
It's under full warranty, and it has a flow-through capability where it won't starve your VP44 injection pump, and you can still continue on with your day.
Okay.
So 10 grand, you're going to be really hard-pressed to find a solid Dodge unless you have a friend and you know the maintenance.
I feel like 10 grand would get me a real nice first gen, no?
I've sold first gens from 15 to 20 grand that were rust-free, low miles, manual trans, four-wheel drive, low miles.
Wow.
Hard to find. And definitely, if you have this cash in your pocket, it's easier because the ball's in your court. If you're trying to get financing with only 10 grand, it's probably not going to happen.
Really?
Yeah, because banks don't want to finance anything really 05 and older, generally speaking. Give you a good rate and give you a good term.
Right.
So to get like a 98.5 second-gen Cummins finance is going to be impossible. If you're a finance customer, don't even look at that truck.
What would be a better option? Let's say I wasn't married to Dodge. What if I'm thinking, hey, I would drive a Ford or I would drive a Chevy? Is there anything that's really going to be in that financeable range?
Financeable range, the closest thing that you're probably going to come to as far as getting financing is a Duramax, because obviously everybody knows that 01 was the start of the Duramaxes with the LB7. Even getting financing on 01 to 05 vehicles currently is really tough.
It's a stretch, okay.
It is a stretch.
So you're probably going to have to walk in with something down and a good credit score.
You're going to want a good credit score. You're going to want money down, or positive equity in your trade.
Okay.
It's going to help because a lot of the times if you're looking for a rust-free truck that's unmodified and low miles, it's going to be above the book value and you have to find a way to come up with that cash.
Right.
And if it's a nice truck, people will come up with that cash.
Yeah.
The book values are great and everything. It's a great guide, but I just want everybody to know that it is a guide. It's not a Bible. There's no button on, the website on Kelley Blue Book or NADA or Edmunds or any of those websites that says, send me the check now for this truck or send me the truck now.
Right.
So, like I said, it's a great guide. You really have to shop the market and know what they're selling for all over from coast to coast because the numbers are all over the board. And to find the truck that you want, $10,000 probably isn't going to get you the nicest family cruiser, Paul.
Okay, but it does get you a starter vehicle. So let's say I'm getting into a starter, into a Duramax. You had mentioned the LB7. We've talked a little bit before about stock LB7s on the podcast, so I know a little bit, and I think our listeners have some of the basics. We want to keep an eye out for injectors. How do you spot injectors if I'm not a technician and I'm on a lot looking at an LB7 that I want to buy?
Well, let's just put it in your head right now that most LB7s are going to need injectors. I've seen them 60,000 to 100,000 miles needing this work. So, knowing that that is the pitfall on LB7 is the injectors and the labor, how labor-intensive the job is. Keep that in mind. You might be getting a great deal on the truck. The truck might be a little smoky. You might have a couple injectors out of spec. But you might have to, just because you got a good deal, you might have to save that money and put it into your injectors.
Sure. Okay. And I know injectors on an LB7 run you anywhere from $4,000 done at a shop all the way up to the $5,500, $6,000, depending on what they run into while they're in there.
Right. And you can spend money. So that great deal you thought you got just turned into a truck that you could have bought maybe an LBZ and not had these problems.
Okay.
So I always show people, what does $5,000 more get you? That's
right.
one big thing. But once again, if you got this cash in your pocket and you're looking to buy a truck, chances are it's going to have rust, miles, or miles and rust.
You're such a salesman. I just heard the line. I always show you what $5 more would get you. The budget's $10,000, Danny.
I know.
It's not 15.
I hear you, but
Fucking salesman.
you know what though? I like to help people spend their money and help them understand what they're fully buying. Because somebody might come in with a $5,000 budget and not even realize what they're even wanting.
Right.
So
I hear you.
You got to take it down to the basics and the foundation of what you're trying to get here.
Okay, how about our Ford guys? What are they buying for $10,000?
You can buy you got an OBS original body style Ford Powerstroke. You can possibly get a 99 to an 03.5 7.3, which personally is my favorite 7.3 that's available in those years. It's just because they had little to no problems. Typically, you hear about it, you read about it, you always hear that, 7.3s are bulletproof, but why are they bulletproof? Well, how do they get to the miles that they have and still be worth something? Well, they've already passed the test of time. The biggest thing to look for, though, on a Ford 7.3 from 99 to 03.5, just right away, look at the oil pan. If that oil pan is rusted, you know that you're going to have an oil pan in your future. And people say, an oil pan, that's simple. That's a simple fix, but not on a 7.3. And you're laughing because the book calls for, I think, 24 hours of labor to do that job.
Oh, yeah, the motor comes out.
Yeah, you got it. And some guys can lift it a little bit and, get creative and
Right.
get it in there. But I'll tell you, usually, you're spending anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000 depending on where you take this thing, and all you did was a stinking oil pan. You didn't even do anything cool. And the problem is if that oil pan's rusted, they use a cheap metal, by the way. That's
Right.
why they rust. And we didn't know about this problem until probably 5 years ago, where we started seeing a bunch come
Right.
in over and over again, from the excursions to anything with a 7.3 from 99 to 03.5. So that can really set you back and thinking you got a great deal once again. And if it's got like a Band-Aid over it, if they make all this aftermarket stuff where you can put a shield over it, I've seen guys that look like they took Bondo to it and tried to fix it while it was on. Anything that's been altered, stay away from it, because there's a reason why somebody tried to Band-Aid it.
Right.
It's just going to cause you problems.
It is not a final solution.
It is not.
I hear you. Okay.
So definitely, rust is a killer, and you'll find if that oil pan's rusted, usually the rockers, cab corners, box, everything else is rusted. So
it's all donezo.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now let's say that I'm 40. I have my 2 kids. I have still all of the same needs for my vehicle, but I got a little bit more money. All right. So let's say that I don't go up $5,000. Let's say I got $25,000.
Okay.
Because we went from basically a bunch of trucks that I heard, although I drive one of the trucks on the list, actually, the old body style Powerstroke.
which is fine.
Old beat up shit, old body style, whatever you want to call it.
Is that what that stands for?
One of us is right. I'm positive of that. But okay, so now let's say that I got $25,000, and maybe I've gone through my first diesel. I've gone through 1 or 2 diesels in the past. I'm ready to trade in my LB7 or my old body style, and I'm ready to get into something new. I want to try Dodge this time. What do you got for me, Danny? What are me and my family going to be happy with?
$25,000. It's definitely from 20 to 30 grand. It's really tough to find a nice rust-free, low-mileage diesel.
That's what you said about $10,000.
I know, but it's such a crazy market out there, and that's why I'm sitting here talking to you today, because I dealt with it every day in and day out for 7 years, and had to explain this to people. So you got $25,000, you're trying to find, and everybody wants a 5.9 Cummins, okay? So to find one with low miles that's rust-free, and when I buy a truck, I like to buy them unmodified, because I know that if somebody's already modified it, they had fun with it. Not everybody's just doing it to get fuel mileage, and there's a small percentage of guys that do that, or people, I should say, that do that, but chances are they were having a little fun with it.
Sure.
So trying to find kind of narrowing down even more, trying to find a rust-free one, low miles, and unmodified is really a needle in a haystack. And for $25,000, it's like the dagger. So what you will find typically is, a 5.9, $25,000, maybe 100,000 to 130,000 miles. 06, 07, 5.9. I'm not a big fan of the 6.7 personally from 07.5 to 09. I just know.
Why is that?
They had a lot of issues. In 07.5, they went from the 5.9 that didn't run an EGR or DPF. So in 07.5, Cummins switched over to the 6.7s to have an emission-compliant setup. So they did, in fact, run an EGR and a DPF, and they needed a couple years to work the bugs out. But guys say, oh, that's great and everything, I'll buy one cheap and delete it. Well, that's fine. We offer tuning for them, but at the end of the day, you can still have problems because it was the first generation, that those years of that motor. Why would you want to buy the first year, make, and model of that setup? Personally,
I hear you. It's the same thing I say about 04.5, 05 LLYs for the Duramaxes. There was first generation equipment. It's unreliable. Right. That's just the way it is.
You should have let the bugs get worked out, and maybe you're going to pay a little bit more, but you're going to get something that's going to be long lasting. You're not going to have headache after headache with it.
Okay.
And resale value.
So you're recommending an 06, 07 Cummins, the 5.9. I love it because I can tune it with the FI Live. Mm-hmm. I love it because there's a ton of performance modifications available out there that I probably can pitch my wife on being okay with. I've had a lot of customers and a lot of people I've dealt with in the past. They weren't doing a transmission build. They were fixing their transmission, and it just happened to come out of the shop better. Right. Twin turbos are for towing. So since I pull a camper and a trailer, I know that there's a plentiful amount of twin kits to choose from to be able to set something up that will be great for the camper with my wife, but also a lot of fun for me on the weekend.
Well, the sky's the limit when it comes to the aftermarket world and a 5.9. Everybody that has a passion for it knows that, and you can spend what you want. But a few small things to really look for that's going to cost you in the long run. If you think you're getting this great deal for $25,000, you're going to want to make sure the front end's nice and tight. They're notorious for being wandering all over the road.
The Cummins death wobble.
Yes, having the death wobble, having the ball joints and the U joints shot out of it. And, now you're stuck spending $2, $3, $4 depending on what kind of parts you put in it.
Sure.
Just in the front end. And once again, you didn't even do anything cool, and you thought, you got a great deal, but now you're stuck spending all this money.
Okay. Plus, if I get an automatic, I'm dealing with a less than reliable automatic transmission. They can be built to be badass, but from the factory, they're not much to sing about.
I don't think they've ever won an award for having the greatest transmission automatic in those
No,
years.
no company ever owned by Daimler Chrysler ever has. No.
Right. So, definitely some things to really look out for is the tranny on most Dodges, especially in a 5.9 era. So just really make sure you know what you're buying. That's what the point of this whole segment's about.
Sure.
So, if you got $25,000 and you say, man, you talked me out of a Dodge with the transmission.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to have an oval. I got to rock an oval up front. What am I spending $25,000 on?
Typically what you will find for $25,000, and I know it sounds sick to even think this way, but
so you're going to say a 6.0, and I'm going to have to kick you off the podcast.
I will not get kicked off the podcast. I hope you still invite me here. But I'll tell you what you can expect to buy, and I've sold a 7.3 for $30,000 before that had 20,000 miles on it.
Sure.
So,
there's exceptions, right? Gems.
Definitely exceptions. Gems, those cream puff trucks that you're just like, oh, it still has the plastic on the CD player. This guy never used it. Oh my God. But I'll tell you, you can find a really super low mileage 7.3 that's rust free in that price range. And I've also seen the market bring higher mileage 6.7s, which are offered from 2011 to present time. The 6.7 is a great motor. I'm not a big fan of the 2011 6.7s because they run a plastic oil pan.
Okay.
And they also have some turbo issues. So if you're going to get a 6.7, try to find a 12 or newer.
Okay.
If you can. Because once again, it's the first year of that whole setup.
Sure.
And if you got into a 12 or newer, your chances of it, having a more pleasant buying experience and owning the truck for that long, you're going to have a better outcome with a 12 or newer.
Okay.
So say, I don't know about that oval. There's no room in my driveway for a Ford, like I always say. What can you find on the Chevy side for $25,000? Well, I'll tell you, you can expect to find a really nice LBZ right around 100,000 miles for $25,000. That's rust-free, unmodified, 4-door short bed, for your family.
Okay.
That can haul, your camper, haul your sweet race car to the drag strip and turn your 9-second quarter mile. Since you're that high-dollar construction worker. And
that's what I do. Yeah. Work hard, play hard.
You betcha. And you should be able to play hard. You're working hard every day.
I hear you.
And, definitely, once again, is the rust thing really plays a factor where we live here in Northern Illinois.
Yeah.
Everything is just rusted and crusted.
Yeah. I also think it's to the point now where Craigslist and other private sale forums are just littered with the term Texas truck, Southern truck. Everything I look at that's used apparently got shipped up here from the South. I don't know if they're not buying used trucks in the South or if every person ever who sold a used vehicle thought they were slick by calling it a Texas truck or a Southern truck. Right. But it is a big factor. I mean, I know when I walk through a parking lot and you look underneath the trucks, or, you know, you look at the back cab corners of the trucks, you can tell which trucks have lived here their whole life and which ones haven't.
And those trucks are still bringing huge money.
Oh, yeah.
Because they can't find them. The supply and demand is crazy. People will still spend the money, and because they know what an LBZ is all about, they know that it'll last forever if they take care of it. You know, who cares about cab corners and rockers? They all rust, they might say. You know, it's a factory option with Dodge. It comes with rust, you know. Okay, big deal. Let's find one that you can start from a rust-free platform.
Okay.
That's always my advice, because when you go to sell it, it's gonna bring you. You know, you're not us diesel guys. We have problems hanging on to stuff sometimes. So when you want to sell that vehicle, you want to be able to show the next guy, hey, look, this is what's done. It was like this when I bought it. It's still rust free, and it still has value to it.
Right. Okay. So let's say I don't have a budget. Let's say I'm willing to spend $40 grand plus. Mm-hmm. But we'll go through the same system here. What am I rocking with horns on it?
You know, a lot of the 4th gen Cummins trucks, my personal favorite, I have to tell you, for, you know, when you get in the newer body style Cummins trucks, I like the 2011 and a half and newer trucks better, because in 2011 and a half, they came out with the Cummins high output, and they were running 800 foot-pounds of torque with the high output. And the way you can simply tell is by looking at the badge on the bottom right of the tailgate. If it says Cummins high output, you know you got 800 foot-pounds of torque from the factory. Now, the manual transmissions weren't offered with that, so they, you know, basically come with 650 foot-pounds of torque if it's not a high output or a manual transmission, just because they can't support it from the factory. So to get that 800 setup, they call it the Cummins 800. Some guys call it that. You know, definitely look at that area 11 or 12, 11 and a half, and newer 13. They came out with the urea. So a lot of guys want only 12, 11 and a half, and 12s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's a huge.
It's that narrow of a market.
It really is a year and a half right there, because people don't realize that you can eliminate all that equipment and do it safely.
Right.
You know, possibly maybe it's too new yet. Maybe they have emissions testing in their area. Who knows what your story is, why you don't want a urea truck, but there's a lot of guys out there that don't want it. So if you are looking for a newer body Cummins, that was always the best seller, 2011 and a half and 2012.
I do love the body style change that Dodge did on the front end. I think it looks absolutely phenomenal. I love the looks from the outside. So grateful that they finally updated their interior. It's no longer the plain, boring plastic that it always has been. It's interactive. It's snazzy, if I could use that word. I definitely think it's something that grabs my attention. I will say
snazzy. I might have to clip your man card, like just like a corner of it or something. Like, hey, calm down. He said it's snazzy, but yeah, they had to do something.
They did. I feel like they finally caught up to the market, because I will say Powerstrokes, I feel by far and large, have always had some of the best interior options. If you wanted something really fancy, Ford probably had it.
And, you know, if I had $1 for every time somebody told me, I want a Ford chassis, I want a Cummins motor, and an Allison transmission, if I had $1 for every time I heard that request, I could build that platform and set it up. Everybody wants that. So, granted, there's good and bad of everything, I think.
Sure.
But to try to, you know, focus on the things that you want to know before you make a purchase, that's why we're here today. You know, and if you have 40 grand on a Ford, chances are you're in a 6.7, all with low miles, probably you know, a really nice setup, Lariat Ultimate package. You know, all the bells, all the whistles, 2012 and newer, all day long you can find one for 40 grand. That's really nice, unmodified and clean.
Nice.
Still
okay.
under warranty, probably you can find one.
Okay, yeah.
Typically, yeah. That's what you would want, you know, if you're going to
I would
spend that
imagine
money.
if I'm in that price bracket that I'm shopping, personally, I would think I either want warranty or I want something that maybe was modified by a trusted source. You know, in my head, I could rationalize spending 40 grand on an 06, 07 truck, regardless of the year. And if it was built right and I knew I could trust the build behind it, that's
like
something that I would be interested. Right? Yeah. If I bought Nick Pregnant's truck,
right,
I would be totally fine with that. That would be totally cool with me. There are shops out there where, the owner has a truck, or maybe the guy who paid that shop to work on it and they have all the receipts. I do feel like buying modified trucks is okay, especially if you're trying to get ahead in a build. It's usually a great way to shortcut a build plan. Somebody else's loss is usually your gain.
Right.
So I think there's some to be played with. I do love the advice. If it's modified, you don't know anything about the history of that modification, assume it's terrible.
Right.
Just play it safe.
Yeah.
It's your money. You know what I mean? You're not gambling with government money. It's your money.
That's why I tell people, buy a stock one. It takes a lot of what-ifs out of the equation.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot more. You can predict more, too, when you start with a stock build. And you start your mod. As hard as that is, I've had to restart my mod list a ton of times. And to restart it, is maybe a bummer. But that it's done right. The parts that you like are in the truck.
Right.
And somebody didn't, shortcut something.
All right. Well, I'm a huge fan of the LMLs. I know we're getting into an LML if we're in that $40,000 price bracket.
Yeah.
Give me some highlights. Give me some lowlights if there are any.
Well, just to rephrase what you're saying, I've sold LBZs in that price range, in that $40,000 price range.
You sold LBZs in that price range in 2007 when they were new. Quit lying.
I have to tell you, we've been able to find really low mileage ones, like one with 1,000 miles, for example, that sold more than $40,000. So I mean, there's those instances where people will spend that cash on an LBZ because it's pre-emissions.
Yeah, there's a sucker born every day, and Danny might find you. I heard you.
The old saying, there's an ass for every seat, So don't be that guy. Make an educated decision when you're out there,
I mean, $40,000. To be honest with you, in that example, $40,000 for a 1,000-mile LBZ. That was, brand new. I probably would have been that sucker who paid it. I feel like that there are some situations that could rationalize it. Mm-hmm. Okay, but if we're talking about in general,
Right.
$40,000. I come on the lot. What should I expect to go home with?
And you're wanting to buy an LML. Chances are it's going to be out of warranty. It's going to be a little bit over 100,000 miles. It's going to be a truck that's been used, obviously, and possibly maybe mildly abused. But you won't find, the showstopper typically for $40,000 on an LML. I have to say, usually they're going to be higher miles, maybe not as nice of an interior as you want, and all the bells and whistles. So, basically, if you want a nice truck, I tell people good is not cheap and cheap is not good. If you're going to pull the trigger and you're going to buy a truck, I'd rather, settle on a payment per month, pay a little bit more than settle on my purchase.
Okay, I hear you. All right, so let's fire through the categories again. I'd love to hear your personal preference as we go through them.
Yeah.
I assume I'm not just going to be a Duramax down the road on price here, right? So if I got $10,000, we talked about first gen, second gen Cummins. We talked about 7.3 Powerstrokes, and we talked about LB7 Duramaxes. Mm-hmm. It's your $10,000 now, Danny. Now you're the customer. Now you're giving me your money.
Yeah.
What do you got?
I'm sorry. I'm a diehard GM guy, and I'm going to find an LB7 that's rust-free. I don't care really how many miles are on it at that point because I know what we're capable of doing with them.
Okay.
So I'll find one. And if you want to put me up to the test, I'll find one for you too. Just
I mean, to be honest with you, I would personally go the other way on this, and I would probably come home with a second gen Cummins. No lie.
See, I'm a big fan of the common rail life.
I mean, I am too. I hear you on this, and I feel like if we were talking about a power platform, which you guys have already heard our budget build episode where Chris Emke and Pete Shibby came on, and we talked about the difference in this $15,000 price range for 600 horsepower. Scott had decided that Pete had a really good presentation and chose his build, but that's okay. I still, to be honest with you, if it was really my money and I was really going home, I probably would pick out the second gen Cummins. I feel like the motor is going to give me more reliability. I feel like my maintenance cost is going to be lower. My repair costs are going to be lower. Right. I feel like there are some advantages to it. I do hear you on the warnings, and I love to know that. Stay away from the 53 block. Yeah. Know what's up with the transmission. I would personally buy a manual anyways, so it really wouldn't be a problem. It's a preference, I think, is my point here.
Well,
is that
we always ask
you
people,
can't be wrong.
Yeah, you can't be. We always ask people, you taught me that. Ask people what they're using the truck for first off. You know? If you're hauling a trailer every day, I'm going to put you in a 5.9 Cummins all day long. If you ever notice on the highway, everybody that's hauling a camper out of Indiana, hauling them to dealerships, 9 out of 10 of them are driving a 5.9 Cummins with a stick. And why is that? because at the end of the week, they get paid on fuel savings. So if they basically save money on fuel, that's money they're putting right back in their pocket.
That's it.
And if I was going to travel to Alaska tonight, I would find a 5.9 stick. That's the most reliable truck you can literally buy, in my opinion. And I'm a diehard Duramax guy telling you that. So it just matters, what are you using the truck for? What are you doing?
That's it.
And if you want to go fast, you want to go places, I'll put you in a Duramax.
And I feel like too, if I'm towing, I could save some money by changing up my cab configuration. Even if I have 2 kids, I could still run an extended cab long bed, generally the lowest priced cab configuration there is in any diesel, pretty much any truck across the board. That is generally considered the least desirable setup.
Quad cab long bed?
Quad cab, no, extended cab long bed are always end up being the cheapest. And it's a school bus to drive. It's not as practical as having a quad cab. Long beds are nice.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something there to help save me some money and help get me a little bit further ahead.
It is an oddball cab box combination, but I'll tell you, the guy that wants that combination because the crew cab long bed won't fit in his garage, he's going to come for that extended cab long bed, and it has a sale written all over it.
That's such a good point. That's such a good point. The little things. You don't think about that when you're at the dealership. Is this son of a bitch going to fit in my garage?
Right.
So it matters. Okay, so I got $15,000. You got $15,000.
Mm-hmm.
What truck are you buying from me?
$15,000. I'll tell you, I'll try to find a high mileage LBZ. It can be done. It's really tough to do. It can be done. A lot of guys like to hang on to them because they know what they have.
Sure.
I call LBZs the holy grail of diesels, in my opinion, because they're the most tuner-friendly truck. We can program the TCM, the ECM. We can do all sorts of different upgrades for cheap,
Right.
You can run 13 seconds and a quarter mile for pretty cheap with an LBZ,
Yeah, I definitely agree. You're in with a shout on that.
Yeah.
Okay. $25,000. That was the budget we were at. We covered the 6.7 Powerstroke high miles, from what I remember. High miles 6.7 Powerstroke.
Yeah, super high miles, like 250.
Whew. Oh, I can't imagine going home after I gave you $25,000 and having a 250,000 mile truck. It happens.
Sure.
There's definitely a niche out there for it. You know, people. It's better than some of their other options, right? But I have a hard time swallowing that pill personally.
And it's tough.
It is. And then now the other option is to go with the Cummins. I can do an 06, 07 common rail Cummins, or I can get into, what are you thinking for mileage? Give me a ballpark on mileage if I'm getting into a Duramax, because we talked about an LBZ for $25,000.
Oh, you're 100,000 miles.
100,000 miles.
Yeah,
okay.
and my numbers, I got to tell you, these are just average numbers that I have in my head from dealing with so many customers across the board, across the country. And so if you're saying in your head, well, he's wrong, I bought my LBZ for $20,000 with 80,000 miles, you might be that rare guy that got a deal. Okay, I'm just saying, if you go out on Auto Trader, you go out on any of these websites, so to speak, Car Gurus, it goes on and on. Of course, this is going to be what you're going to expect to pay for something that's nice and worthwhile, not something that's been on a farm its whole life, been being used and abused. You know what I mean?
I hear you. I think that's a good point to make. There's, like we said before, there's definitely going to be some exceptions, some outliers out there. But what we're trying to really focus on here is hone in on the general majority.
Right.
What's the most people or the most average situation we can look at. Okay. So do you go with the Duramax? Do you go with an LBZ? The pinnacle, the best, the holy grail, I take it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not even
I've
considering
owned 4
the Cummins.
LBZs, I have to tell you. So there's a reason why I keep going back to LBZs. And people always ask me, well, why have you owned 4? Well, what happens is I always trick them out, and then somebody wants to buy it at the gas station, at Walmart. I don't care where, in traffic, they're rolling their window down saying, how much you want for your truck? Because they know what I have, because they either had one, their friend has one, or they read about it.
Right.
And even with high miles, they will bring big money.
I got to agree with you on this one. I would definitely go with the LBZ at a $25,000 price range. I don't think there's any question in my mind.
Yeah.
I love the Cummins option. Yeah, you could get into an LMM. I think at that ballpark.
And that's for you guys that don't know the alphabet, the RPO codes. LMM is 07.5 to 2010, the new body style that they changed over in 07.5 from the classic body Duramax to the new body style, which is known as the LMM. That's it.
Absolutely. Added a DPF, caused problems. But no big deal. Worse things have happened. Okay, I'm in the unlimited, or I'm in the $40,000 price range. I'm looking at a used truck. I'm not buying something brand new. I got to be honest with you, man. You really sold me on a warrantyable 6.7 Powerstroke. Now, they're not the worst trucks on earth. They definitely, I think, Ford has stepped up reliability and power and production. And I said I love their interiors. I really do think that they offer the best interior options. I don't know that they're affordable or practical by the time you get done paying for them, but I do love the way they look when somebody else has shelled out the money for it. I think if I had 40 grand, no, if I had 40 grand, I'd still buy an LML. How about you, Danny?
You know, I got to say that I am a big fan of all the newer trucks that are out.
Okay.
They're all so similar anymore, and there's so much available in the aftermarket world for all of them. Powerstrokes probably were one of our best sellers from a 2011 to newer.
Okay.
And to say that, it's because they do hold a high book value, even used. So to have one on the lot and to get it in NADA value, that's a big thing right there. You really got to shop at the NADA value, because here in the Midwest, banks don't even use Kelley Blue Book. That is a West Coast value.
Yeah.
Not many people realize that Kelley Blue Book and Edmunds don't have any bearing here in the Midwest. All the banks here are going to use NADA, and you can check it out yourself. There's also a dealer side of it that you can't see, but the public side of it is so close. So I recommend researching your NADA value just for your own sake, because you don't want to fall in love with the truck and then realize that it's $5,000 over book and you don't have $5,000 in your pocket extra and you want to finance that truck and your heart's broken. Now your banker's telling you no because it's $5,000 over book, but that's the one you want. So do your preliminary homework on that website. It's not a Bible, like I was saying. It's just a great guide. So if you find one that's above it or below it, I've sold trucks that were $10,000 over book, $10,000 under book.
Right.
It can go both ways. And I'm not going to tell a guy that just because it's $10,000 under book that I can charge you 10 more. I'm charging the lowest possible price right now because we want to earn your business.
Sure. Well, it's market price, and
Right.
I think that's the big difference. It is really hard, especially if you're a first-time lot purchaser. So if you've bought all of your cars used from friends or private sellers in the past, and this is your first time at a dealership, it's hard to kind of wrap your head around it. That there is an actual live market value, the absolute highest amount that a dealership can get based on the lowest amount of money that a customer is willing to spend. So you got to find that kind of agreement in between those two gauges. But I definitely appreciate all of the insight you gave us today, Danny. I think this is a great guide. If customers want to do more, I definitely refer you to checking out the Duramaxtuner. Has some information, has some videos on first-time car purchase or first-time diesel truck purchasing.
Segment. Yeah, that's what inspired me to want to talk about this today, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah, they killed it with that stuff. There's also a ton of forums out there, Duramax Forum, Diesel Place, Diesel Bombers, depending on what brand you're into, Cummins Forum, different things like that. Research the forums. You're not the first guy to have this question.
Right.
And that's what we really want to encourage people to realize. Whatever you're thinking about diesel performance or whenever you're thinking about purchasing a new vehicle, somebody else has been through that experience, and they probably have some good insight that'll help point you in the right direction as well.
And I just want to put this out there. I have a listener out there. I don't know who you are, but you're saying, oh, he didn't say anything about 6.0s or 6.4 Powerstrokes. What the heck?
That was on purpose.
Okay. But I just want to go back to that just real briefly to let you know that you can find these type of trucks from 03.5 to 2010 for fairly cheap sometimes. The 6.0 was offered from 03.5. September 15th of 03, they switched over to 07. And then the 6.4 was offered from 08 only till 2010. And they switched over from the Huey injection in the 6.0 to the common rail injection in 08, which is a huge jump for Ford at that time. But a lot of guys spent a lot of money on these trucks to keep them on the road. In my experience, there's a lot of guys that enjoy them. A lot of mechanics own them, and a lot of guys that are into horsepower love 6.4s. But they are the most expensive to own and operate out of all the trucks we talked about. That's why I left them till the end here.
And it's nothing to do with a bias on this. This is factual information. I'm not trying to bash on 6.0s. I'm not trying to bash on 6.4s.
Right.
But we did discuss leaving them out of the episode because we personally would not recommend anybody we know to go and purchase one.
Right, unless you're a mechanic and you fully understand what you're getting into, and you have free time, because they're very labor intensive.
If you have free time and money, you should just call me. I got some really cool stuff you could work on around my house.
Call me too.
Yeah,
call
absolutely.
Us. Yeah. And if you have any other questions about any other truck, what to purchase, what should I get into, what's tuner friendly, call us. We'd love to chat with you.
Absolutely. Well, folks, thank you very much for listening. This has been Paul Wilson.
And I'm Danny Voss
with the Diesel Performance Podcast. Have a great night.
The Diesel Performance Podcast is brought to you by Calibrated Power Solutions, home of Duramaxtuner.com, developer of performance engine and transmission calibrations for a wide variety of late model diesel powertrains, including the Duramax, Cummins, John Deere, Jeep, and many more. For more information and the best customer service in the industry, check out calibratedpower.com or call 815-568-7920.